Record on this. Okay, so welcome to the Chakra Way Meditation Podcast. And today I'm joined by Greg Wieting, who is a healer and all round very interesting guy. So welcome, Greg. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Roseanne. Glad to be here.
It's lovely to see. I'm looking at Greg in the beautiful sort of San Francisco sunshine pouring in behind him, and I'm sitting in a very cold, dark UK. So it's very nice to reach out and have a chat with you. So you are a healer, and one of the, obviously people who listen to my podcast know that I am really interested in talking to people who deal with healing, because healing is such an energetic process. And I know that you will probably speak to the sort of the traditional Western medicine healthcare side of things as well. But just tell me a little bit about how you got to become a healer and what started you on your journey to be who you are today.
Sure. Yeah, the tools that I help my clients heal with today are the tools that I use to heal myself. So if you met me 25 years ago, I was really struggling. I was living with chronic pain, pretty debilitating anxiety and depression, had a severe curve in my spine, scoliosis. And I found that a lot of traditional approaches to therapy were ill-equipped to address what I came to understand as trauma stored in my body and maladaptations to the trauma and the stress that were really compounding the anxiety and the depression and the pain I was experiencing. So that led me on a pretty extensive journey to find out how to heal. And that was following breadcrumbs, which, was an introduction to energy medicine and Reiki, which was the first time I had an experience where I was living or experiencing myself outside of my own pain body. And that was pretty revealing to get a sense that, oh, I'm not my pain. Up until that point, all I knew was my pain. And so I had a deep identification with my pain. And that continues to just perpetuate more and more of it.
Yeah.
So to get a glimpse that I'm not my pain really catapulted my healing journey. So 4 years into studying energy medicine, I was introduced to meditation, and that led me to India for 8 months. And that's where, developing somatic and mindfulness-based practices to really start to release stress and tension and trauma stored in the body was a really important part of my healing journey. And then thereafter, kind of the world of yoga and Ayurveda, and then that led me to the world of trauma and neuroscience. And so, yeah, I am 3 inches taller today than I was 25 years ago, no longer live with chronic pain, anxiety, or depression. So I've really reverse engineered all of what helped me heal to create as much of a step-by-step process for folks to heal themselves. So that's the journey.
God, that's a wonderful journey, and I can totally see the breadcrumb trail. It's really, really interesting. And I think, one thing that resonated for me that you said is that you were your pain, you really identified with your pain. And I think that that's something that people who do suffer with chronic pain or even anxiety or any kind of trauma-based type of debilitating, as you say, situation, but pain, especially physical pain, it feels like so inescapable that that's all you know. And it's that classic thing of wherever you place your attention, it's where your energy goes to. And so when all you're focusing on is your pain, then that's all that's all you get is your pain. So to be removed from that was extraordinary. So that was through Reiki, right?
Yeah, that was through Reiki, where I just got a glimpse of just rising above my pain body. And, that was a friend introduced me to energy medicine. She was actually also a massage therapist. She offered me a massage, but at the time I was living in such severe chronic pain that I didn't even want physical touch. So that's when the introduction to Reiki came in. And She said she didn't even have to, physically touch or just use gentle touch. And yeah, realized I found something I didn't even know I was looking for.
Yeah.
And for that, I've been reading some books on meditation, and time and nature and music were kind of I wouldn't even at that time call it my spiritual path, although that now looking back, that was kind of my journey to connecting to my spirit and connecting to something outside of my pain, something more true and authentic to who I am. And so, yeah, that was quite the awakening.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, if we sort of track back to the beginning of what you were saying, and the source of most of our pain, depression, anxiety, illness, whatever, a lot of it can be put down to stress, sure, but you said trauma. So what I want to ask you is when you say trauma, I mean, obviously we all know sort of the very obvious traumas that that people suffer, various abuses and poverty, or I don't know, various traumas that people go through, experiences, shocks, accidents, what have you. But I feel like we all have some kind of level of trauma that can then come out in some physical way or in a mental issue way. So how do you go about sort of identifying what somebody's trauma is and sort of unpicking it? Because, you could be quite sort of thinking, well, nothing ever that bad's happened, but I'm still experiencing this chronic pain. Or you go, well, I did have a traumatic thing, but why should that mean that I've got chronic shoulder pain? So how do you go about sort of putting the trauma and the situation that needs healing? How do you go about putting those together and understanding that?
Sure. Yeah, good question. So, as much as I help people heal trauma, my focus isn't on the trauma. The function of my work is actually just to help people restore their connection to their innate wisdom. And innate wisdom was a term that was first developed in the world of chiropractic many decades ago. And it's likened to the healing mechanism that if we get a paper cut, we'll send platelets and proteins and orchestrate all these biochemical transmissions to heal the paper cut. So that healing mechanism gets disrupted from stress and from trauma. So the function of my work is to just help people restore their connection to their innate wisdom. So in many cases, we don't actually have to name the trauma. We
Don't
don't have
even
to
visit the trauma. Okay, yeah, useful.
And in some cases, it is the more we are connected to our innate wisdom, then the more we may have eyes to see the trauma. We may have more of an awareness of these maladaptations to stress. But yeah, it's true. A lot of times, I'll have clients that say, "Well, nothing bad happened to me, so I don't think I have trauma." And so, yeah, trauma isn't always these big bad things that happen to us. I think we can also consider trauma as just any adverse lived experience that we harbored on our own, where we lacked support, where we lacked connection, and where we lacked safety. And so another way to look at trauma, which I think is more insidious, which a lot of folks come to me where again, nothing bad happened to them. But in early development, perhaps they couldn't rely on consistent, reliable support to get their needs met. So when we're very young, if our developmental needs are not being met, that can literally signal life or death, right? And so early on, we start to develop strategies to either hide or perform parts of ourselves to try to get our needs met, because the signal is, well, if I'm not getting my needs met, something must be wrong with me. So let me, change who I am, or, suppress parts of who I am so I can be loved or be liked, be seen, and get my needs met. And that really sets up a whole pattern of hypervigilance, right? This sense of having to hustle for one's worth, and this pedal to the metal mindset that, really starts to lend itself to adrenal fatigue and burnout and overwhelm later in life. And so that's, I think, a bit more of the insidious trauma, where folks realize, well, nothing bad happened to me, but maybe the right good things weren't in place either.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so often when it comes to healing, and it's, and I teach this on my chakra course, and it's sometimes the toughest part of the work. And I don't, I don't ask people to tell me about it, but the stuff that happened to you in your childhood, the programming that happened in your childhood, the sort of whether you were supported or not, is has a huge impact on your energetic body as you go through life. And for me, it's one of these things where I really want to sort of make it known to all new parents, because it's too late for the rest of us. We've had our childhood. That that is such an important formative thing for kids. Up to the age of 7, like, you kind of think, oh, there's nothing. They won't remember. They're little. You just sort of whatever. They're just kids, and it's such a wrong way to think, because, as you say, if you're not getting your needs met in those very formative years, which in chakra terms we relate to that root chakra, which is all about survival, your family, having what you need to just be, to live your life. Yeah, it can come out in all sorts of different ways energetically, and that's yeah, can play out in lots of different ways. So, it's interesting because you're looking at healing pain, but you also look to heal anxiety and depression, which do you find that those sometimes they come from the same place but just display differently? How does that, I don't know why that's just occurred to me. That is that true in any way? That depends on the person and how you deal with things and how your body is, whether it's physical pain that comes out or anxiety, more sort of mental side of things.
So yeah, I don't really distinguish any difference between mental, emotional, or physical.
Yeah.
Addressing how the residue of trauma is stored in the body, it's going to impact all levels of who we are: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, because all of these aspects are energy, right? And
Of
so a
course.
residue of trauma that gets stored, let's say, in the connective tissue and fascia, is going to pull on the muscles and bones. So that's going to distort literally our postural balance. That residue and stagnation of emotions going to compromise the immune system. It's certainly going to activate the nervous system. It's going to impact hormonal balance. And so the function of healing is to really help address the subconscious and the unconscious mind, which gets stored in the physical body.
Yeah.
So many of us are living from the neck up because these imprints of trauma stored in the body are really not making the body a safe place to inhabit, right? So in some cases, trauma is too much too soon. And so there's an overwhelming experience that floods the nervous system, and we don't have the capacity to process it and to feel it. And so that gets stored in our cells and in our tissues, and that's going to impact physiological function. That's going to impact our thoughts, our behaviors, our beliefs. So yeah, I find when it comes to anxiety, depression, and chronic pain, they start to kind of create a feedback loop. I was talking to a student the other day who, is probably 70% better in terms of their physical pain. And healing is nonlinear. We take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So each time they take 1 step back, even though, they are 70% improved, and they just take 1 little step back, and they're still far, more out of pain than they have been in some time, that activates the fear of more pain. So then that kicks up the anxiety, right?
Yeah.
So it can become a bit of a vicious cycle. And that's really the function of the mindfulness-based practice, is the mind training to strengthen the muscle of the mind to consciously make the choice to not hone in on just the pain with this narrow lens, which again, we tend to do, to expand the aperture of our vision to see that, okay, there's pain here, but there's all these other parts of my experience too. So then the pain isn't the singular experience. We just get to put the pain in perspective. And over time, that mind training then helps us to start to look at the aperture of possibility that's out on the horizon. So it just helps us, yeah, kind of track both global and local awareness. So there may be local experiences of pain or anxiety or depression, but that's not the totality of our experience or the totality of who we are. And that's practice. That's practice.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that we store so much, all of our energy is stored in our bodies, and it comes out in these, whack-a-mole kind of ways. Who knows where it's going to pop up and what form this, whatever trauma we have, whatever, energy that we're holding on to that we don't want to hold on to. It's not, it seems to me that the sort of traditional Western healthcare system doesn't take that into consideration. We're very much, when we go to the doctor, getting our symptoms treated. And I don't know if you are detecting any shift in that these days. I mean, I know that in the UK, certainly, doctors will, prescribe things like gardening or yoga, or, they'll prescribe things which are energy based, but they won't say, go and get some Reiki. So how do you, and what's your sort of take on that, the way the healthcare system deals with the pain that we feel? Because obviously, on the whole, we're given a pill. Here's the pill. It'll take it away. Take the pill, happy days.
Well, and I think we're in an interesting time because I think trauma is an invisible epidemic, and there are more people today suffering with anxiety, depression, and chronic pain than there ever has been before.
Agreed.
And there are more people being medicated for anxiety, depression, and chronic pain than there ever have been before.
Yeah.
So something doesn't add up, because everyone being treated with medication, yet just as more people than ever suffering. Yeah, tells me that something's not really working here. But just at the same time, there is actually Reiki in lots of oncology settings and hospitals. So there is more alternative medicine and energy medicine that is being practiced in a more institutionalized setting. A huge source of my referrals comes from a psychiatrist. So he is treating his patients medically. But to his credit, one of his clients or patients, after she started working with me, just no longer needed medication. And I've seen this before when my clients have become less dependent on medication. A doctor will just brush it off and say, well, it must have been a misdiagnosis in the first place. And to his credit, he said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm doing all of this healing work with Greg. And he gave me a call, and we've had several conversations. This was already, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And now he's become a huge referral source for my practice. So he sends many of his patients with complex trauma and PTSD to me, because he realizes that while he's helping some of them, I'd say kind of tread water just to stay afloat. And again, sometimes I think where folks are at, depending on how severe their pain is, their anxiety or their depression is, I think medication can be kind of a life preserver that gets thrown out, and it's just helping people, not sink.
Yeah.
So I think there's a time and a place for it. However, a lot of folks are taught that, well, this chemical imbalance is what's causing your anxiety or depression. So we're going to treat the chemical imbalance medically. And then a lot of folks think, well, that must be that.
Yeah.
The thing is, research has never actually proven that chemical imbalance causes anxiety or depression. And we don't even actually know the origins of why we have chemical imbalance. So the thing is, underlying trauma and attachment wounding are two huge causative factors beneath anxiety, depression, and I think in a lot of cases as well, chronic pain as well. And so, and the good news is we have a lot of tools to help us actually heal unresolved trauma and attachment wounding. And when we do, chemical imbalance will often clear up. And then so too can our anxiety, our depression, and our pain. But, for me, I'm all about an integrative approach. So a lot of my clients are coming to me and they've been medicated through their psychiatrist that has sent them to me. And my goal isn't to get them off their meds. My goal is for them to just live their best life, right? And for some, that's a balance where maybe they, find they can, lessen their dependence on some meds. But I've had many, many, many clients completely eliminate their dependence on medications.
Wow.
Once you've addressed the underlying patterns,
Yeah.
because we think of the chemical imbalance, the anxiety, the depression, the chronic pain is really just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
It's working with energy medicine and somatics, mindfulness, trauma, and neuroscience. We're starting to unpack all the causative factors that are beneath the tip of the iceberg, beneath the surface. And that's when people can really reclaim their power, reclaim their agency. And that's the heart of healing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find that it's interesting to hear you talk, in a very sort of straightforward, healing way, because the work that I do with the chakras, when I teach people about that, I'm trying to give them the tools that, and they're all of those same tools, they're very somatic. It's body work, yoga, breathing, meditation, awareness, intelligence, self-investigation, all sorts of different things can be used. There's myriad, an endless number of ways that you can access your energy to shift and change and heal and create transformation. But I'm interested to know, because I was having a look at your website, obviously, and I see that you have a sort of system which you call Prisma. And I was looking at that, and of course I was joyful to find that you have 7 pillars, because so often when I'm talking to people who are healers and they have some kind of a system, or the number of times, more often than not, there are always 7 pillars, which, I work with the 7 chakra system. So it always makes me happy, because I feel like there's always going to be a parallel that we can draw somewhere. So talk me through what Prisma is, and how it works, how you came up with it, what it consists of. I mean, that's an awful lot of questions. So start wherever you fancy.
Absolutely. And yeah, I didn't seek out to create, Prisma or the 7 pillars. That was, over the last, I'd say 5 years, me really reverse engineering what I'd been teaching intuitively, and, seeing really great results, helping people heal. And as I was reverse engineering it, I realized that what I was teaching intuitively did kind of fall into these 7 pillars, which do actually correspond to the chakra system. I actually don't teach the chakra system in my foundational course. So people learn the 7 pillars without the roadmap of the chakras yet. I teach that in kind of the next phase of my training program. However, yeah, the 7 pillars are really the drop pins on the roadmap to healing. And so basically, Prisma is an 8-week online course. The first module is trauma foundations. So just developing an understanding of what trauma is, just a vocabulary and an understanding of the nervous system. And so that trauma and neuroscience roadmap, I find, is just helping my students get a lay of the land. For me, I felt like my healing path was a long and windy road, and I was seeing healers and therapists, and I knew I was on the right path, but I didn't really know exactly where I was or where I was headed.
Yeah.
If I had even understood what the nervous system was 25 years ago, that would have just given me that much more of a contextual framework for the work I'm doing. So I want to give that to people, so there's no guessing games, or, and, just pull back the curtain so we can just see the path ahead of us. And then, yeah, the 7 pillars are the drop pins on that map. And so I consider them kind of helping folks map a journey from pain to purpose. So the first pillar is nervous system regulation. And so that's where we can derive psychological safety, trust, and really that sense of grounded stability and presence. The second pillar is embodiment. And so how can we actually live, not just from the neck up, but start to inhabit our body and really feel ourselves.
Yeah.
And that is tied into, returning to a fluid body, right? And so thawing out the stagnation of trauma that calcifies and makes us rigid and hard. So when we can reclaim our ability to feel ourselves, we can reclaim agency and presence. And then the third pillar is attunement, which is really the heart of emotional intelligence. And that's where I talk about grieving the loss of what never was. So in terms of processing the emotional impact of unmet needs in early development and harnessing the power of our emotions, understanding the anatomy of our emotions so we can heal relationally, understanding what our needs are, communicating what our needs are, navigating conflict in a way that can create a bridge of connection. And so that's really the power of connection. Which again, connection is a huge healing tonic from kind of the alienation and isolation of trauma. Fourth pillar is orientation, which is very much a sense of belonging within the heart. And it's helping us renegotiate how we relate to our values. Our values are often derived from the most emotionally significant experiences in our life, kind of for better or for worse. And so it's kind of exploring the dynamic between fear-based motivation and aspirational inspiration. So what are we motivated to move away from, which is often fear and pain? What are we inspired to move towards? And how can we then fulfill and live into our values from a place that is more aspirational and less fear-based? And then the fifth pillar is narration, which, throat chakra. How do we start to shift the regressive behaviors and beliefs organized around wounding to create more of a possibility consciousness? So how do we flip the script on a lot of the narratives, a lot of the stories, a lot of the behaviors and beliefs that can oftentimes keep us stuck and organized around wounding, and repattern them towards possibility? It's like the essence of neuroplasticity, where our imagination literally is creating the structure of our brain and the structure of our lives. The sixth pillar is identity. And that's really the self-inquiry work, and how we are not our wounding. So if we are not our wounding, who are we? So living that inquiry. And I think that's where we access a lot of creativity, and really is the birthplace of innovation. And experiencing who we are as process and change, as opposed to this fixed, rigid thing. And then the final pillar is impact, and really this sense of purpose, our connection to all that is, like Swadharma, like our connection to our purpose. And what if our purpose isn't externally driven, but it's really a pathway to intrinsic motivation? Like I love the imagery of knowing our place in the cosmic order. So a star in a constellation just gets to be itself, and it knows its place in the cosmic order. And so this idea that purpose is not so much what we do, but who we are. And all of these pillars are just helping us live in a place of presence, where we just get to kind of unburden everything that is getting in the way of just this authentic state of being.
Which that's a really magical journey. I love the way that you describe those 7 pillars, because I can see the sort of the fairly clear alignment with the chakra system, but it really is a kind of a lovely deep inquiry, different way. You're just coming at the same thing, working energy from a different direction that I do, which I absolutely love. So what are the methods, the modalities, if you like? I mean, obviously you've mentioned a few at the beginning of our chat. You mentioned a few of the things that you work with, like Reiki and yoga as well. But when somebody starts to work with you, I mean, obviously it's going to be different for everybody, but what are the kind of things are you asking them to do? Journaling and keeping record, notes, or, how do you work with people? I'm just fascinated to know.
Yeah. So at least through Prisma, the online course, training, and community, folks go through the 8-module course, which guides them through the pillars.
Yeah.
And then have access to the somatic and mindfulness-based practices. So those are guided practices with me 3 times a month over a year-long period. And that's where we really get to embody the practices. Again, that's the mind training where we are reorienting from pain to possibility. So really becoming well steeped in, I'd say there's probably like 36 different mindfulness-based practices that I teach throughout the 7 Prisma pillars. And then the energy medicine component, right? So the energy medicine piece, the Reiki piece, is really helping us heal the subconscious and the unconscious mind that's stored in the tissues. So there's just some pain that we can't think or talk our way through. So learning, energy medicine, learn a complete Reiki 1, 2, and 3 training program. And those are offered, and it's all online through 9 one-day retreats through the course of a year. So folks really learn the entire system within the first 3 months, but then have year-long access, and so they can just deepen into the practices.
So I'm just sort of a little side note. So when you're teaching, we come to the Reiki portion of your course, like when you're teaching Reiki, are you teaching them how to do Reiki on themselves, or to do Reiki, or are you doing, is the Reiki being, I don't know a huge amount. It's one of the things that is on my bucket list. I would really like to learn more about Reiki. I need to talk to a Reiki practitioner. So, but you obviously are, a practitioner of Reiki. So what is the tool that you're giving them when you're giving them Reiki? Because I always thought that, you could go and have a Reiki session, someone would do Reiki to you and, help you with your energetic body, what have you. But tell me a bit more about that.
So folks can receive Reiki from a practitioner and have a Reiki session. Or when you go to a Reiki training or a Reiki school, you're learning how to give yourself Reiki.
Right.
And you can also then learn how to become a practitioner and give others Reiki. I teach very much through a trauma-informed lens. So my first program, the year-long program, folks are learning all levels of Reiki, but the focus is very much on self-care and self-healing, because I think that then becomes the foundation for our capacity to support others on their healing path, is the depth of our own capacity to heal ourselves. So folks are learning how to give themselves Reiki, which for folks who are new to Reiki, Reiki is defined as universal life force energy. And it's just helping us access our own innate capacity to heal. Again, it's flushing out the stagnation and the residue of trauma that's stored in the body. I think a nice imagery that's actually helpful is to think of the body and the mind and the spirit as a symphony orchestra. And when we're experiencing health, all the different parts of the body are in constant communication. They are harmonized and they're playing in tune. So we're making sweet music. But because of trauma and because of stress, the nervous system will get short-circuited. And all of a sudden, the different parts of the orchestra, the body, mind, and spirit, start to lose that capacity to communicate with one another. And so when that communication gets broken up, we start to create a whole lot of noise. So, and that's when our symptoms, our illness, and our disease start to surface. And so, as I kind of mentioned earlier, my job is just to help restore people to their innate wisdom. And as we connect to our innate wisdom, it breaks up all that noise. And then the symphony orchestra we are starts to come back into this harmonic balance. So Reiki, which is just applied through the laying of hands, there is just so much research around the science of touch. It's the only sense we can't live without. So through touch, we calm the cardiovascular system, we reboot the immune system, we regulate the nervous system. So there's all these physiological benefits from a touch-based healing practice. Many indigenous cultures use touch, have been using touch for centuries to heal. So it's just, we even think when a kid gets, a boo-boo, let's say, we kiss, we touch it to self-soothe, or when we hit our elbow, we touch, right? There's the innate impulse to touch, to heal. So it's just reclaiming the power of touch to heal ourselves. And so, I've found over the years, just on my own healing journey, when I've overlaid energy medicine with somatics and mindfulness and trauma and neuroscience, that's what has helped me really flush out the residue and the subterranean patterns of trauma stored in my body, which then allowed my entire musculoskeletal system to reorganize. So that's solving the chronic pain, the anxiety, and the depression.
Yeah, extraordinary. And so in your own healing journey, and you say you had a scoliosis, which is a curvature of the spine, and you were doing all these various healing modalities to sort of get yourself back on track. Was it anything specific that you think did that, or was it just an overall? Is it the fact that, I mean, and I'm kind of know the answer to this already, I think, but is it or everything combined, all the different various little parts of this, where you were dealing with your energy and dealing with your trauma and dealing with your, all the various bits that you were healing, that gradually allowed your spine to realign itself back into there wasn't one particular thing. That's what I'm getting at. It was a bit of everything.
Yeah, and that's why I've created Prisma. It's like it was no one thing. There are no silver bullets when it comes to healing. Although healing can sometimes be spontaneous and there can be rapid shifts in healing, it's often because we've been tending to the garden. We've been setting or creating the climate for healing to happen. And that takes time and practice. And so that's somatics, the mindfulness, the energy medicine, having this trauma and neuroscience roadmap. So we have both an intellectual understanding of healing and an energetic and a somatic understanding of healing. So we're healing both through mind and body and also through spirit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is exactly where we're speaking in the same language in a way here, because that's exactly what I advocate and love is using, because I came to where I am through yoga, just because I loved yoga, I became a yoga teacher. But then I realized that it was supporting me in so many different ways. Just, having just focused on the physical practice to begin with, I then realized what an incredibly important part, not only the breathing, the meditation, and the philosophy, and the mindset around the yoga, and then the physical stuff, that was just an amazing way where the body was communicating with my energetic body without completely bypassing my brain and my head, my thoughts. I was doing it, and I think a lot of people do that. They go to the gym or they do some physical exercise because it makes them feel good. They don't really know why, they just know it's good for them, so they do it. It makes them feel good, so they do it. But it's contributing to your energetic body in such an important way. This whole looking at everything, and that's I love to get this message out, is that it is, and everybody knows it, mind, body, spirit. We have to work with all of three at once, in whatever way works for you, to find that sort of wholeness, to find that oneness and that balance that we want so that we have the healthy mind, healthy body, and can sort of do what we want to do in life. Absolutely. Yeah.
The body's highly resilient, and so we learn how to adapt to trauma and distress, but eventually those maladaptations will catch up to us. Fortunately, the system is highly resilient. So when we start to add in environmental influences to counter stress, to create harmony, to create balance, the system is just very responsive. The body is designed to heal. And so with the right tools, with the right support, it has a really remarkable capacity to create new possibility, to create new balance, to create a new expression of health.
So if somebody's listening who is suffering with, let's say, anxiety or chronic pain, whatever, they're suffering somehow, what's your advice in terms of what the sort of how their first step to finding something that's going to, towards this work? What would you suggest they do?
Yeah. Again, there's no one way to heal.
Exactly. It's
But
almost a trick question, isn't it?
a lot of folks, I think, will, reach out to, let's say, one healer or therapist or take one training. And if it doesn't feel like it's the right fit, they may just give up and they'll be like, well, nothing is going to work for me. So it's like, we need to be our own best advocates, and we need to keep leaning in and becoming very resourceful in finding what are the tools that do work. Okay, that tool didn't work. Let me leave it behind. But also giving tools some time to understand that things aren't just an overnight, you know, an overnight shift. So
Yeah.
it's like commitment's the big part, and then action, commitment and action. And we can't heal in isolation. As mammals, we're social creatures, so we're not meant to live alone, and we
Yeah.
can't heal in isolation. So we
Yeah, we
need
all
support.
need support. I mean, that's what we said right at the beginning, wasn't it? That one of the main traumas that we have from growing up is not having had that support that we so desperately need. Because as you say, we are community based people, beings. We need each other. And yeah, I totally agree. I've spoken to lots of various healers and so on, and they always say, there's always somebody who shows up and they just go, well, you didn't fix me in one session, so I'm never coming back again. It's just like, yeah, there's a certain amount of patience, but also I think it's really important to find somebody who you resonate with, because there is somebody out there for everybody who's going to resonate, somebody who you go, yeah, they feel like my person, they feel like they're the person who could help me. So keep searching.
Exactly. I think that's, although the modality or the treatment may be like highly effective, yeah, that's the most benefit of any therapeutic relationship is the relationship itself. And so are you able to forge a connection with this person that is going to support psychological safety and trust?
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of a client the other day, and I'm very transparent with my story, and I'll share when it's helpful. So my clients and my students don't feel so alone in their journey. So I'll share, tidbits of my healing journey. And, a lot of my clients trust that I can hold them in their pain because they have an understanding of the depth of my own pain that I have navigated through. And so it's important that, you're working with folks who can get you, who understand you, to some degree, perhaps who have been there. And that makes a big difference for you to be able to let down your guard and lean into that support and receive it.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So, I mean, if anybody's out there and they feel that they're resonating with Greg, then how do they people get in touch with you? And
Sure. Yeah. GregWieting.com. And yeah, so I have Prisma, the online course, the training program, and the community. So that is where I teach you I once had a client years ago who said, I just wish I could get inside your head. And it's like, all right, this community, this training program is how you get inside my head and have all the tools you need to heal yourself. And then I also have limited space on my schedule to work one-on-one. So some folks may not feel ready to dive into a training program. They just want that one-on-one support. So that's available too. And on my website, you can learn about both. And then it all starts with a phone conversation. We
yeah,
just schedule or a Zoom call. We
yeah,
just schedule a time to chat. I want to know where you're at, where you want to be, what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't. What are your biggest challenges? What's the vision you have? What do you really want? And we're kind of vetting each other out to feel
yeah,
into if we can, I'm all about creating win-wins, like I pride myself on getting results. And if I feel like I'm not the right person to help you get the results that, you deserve and you want, then I'm going to send you elsewhere.
mm,
But if I feel confident that I can help you get those results, then I'll invite you on board to work with me.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a two-way street. You have to the resonation. That's not even a word, is it? The resonance needs to work both ways. That's true. Yeah. No, well, I'm fascinated by what you do, Greg, and I really think that what you're doing is spectacular. It's gorgeous work, and energetic work of any sort is wonderful. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me. I feel like I've taken, it's time for you to get on with the rest of your day. And thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really fascinating chatting with you. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.